Hello, welcome to Elevate Online Church Experience. If this is your very first time, karibu sana. Thanks for joining us, and we hope that you will get blessed together with us.
If you have subscribed, thumbs up. If you have not, please do, and click like and share.
I do love praise and worship, and today we get led by today's community church and the Rocks. Stay with us.
When night has fallen, when fear is calling, still you're calling me. When faith is lost and my hope exhausted, you will be my strength. When my mind says I'm not good enough, God, you're enough for me. I've decided I'm not giving up, 'cause you won't give up on me. You won't give up on me. Your love is holding on and it won't let go. I feel it breaking out like an echo. Your love is holding on and it won't let go. I feel it breaking out like an echo, echo in my soul. In every season, you keep repeating promises to me. Now there's no stopping what you have started until it is complete. When my mind says I'm not good enough, God, you're enough for me. I've decided I'm not giving up, 'cause you won't give up on me. You won't give up on me. Your love is holding on and it won't let go. I feel it breaking out like an echo. Your love is holding on and it won't let go. I feel it breaking out like an echo, echo in my soul. My mind says I'm not good enough. God, you're enough for me. I decided I'm not giving up, 'cause you won't give up on me. You won't give up on me. Your love is holding on, it won't let go. I feel it breaking out like an echo. Your love is holding on, it won't let go. I feel it breaking out, breaking out. Your love is holding on, it won't let go. I feel it breaking out like an echo. Your love is holding on, it won't let go. I feel it breaking out like an echo, echo in my soul.
In my mother's womb, you formed me with your hands, known and loved by you. Before I took a breath, together for my future and for my good. You make all things work together for your glory and for your name. Oh, as you are. Ooh. There's a healing light just beyond the clouds. Though I walk through fire, I see clearly now. I know nothing has been wasted, no failure or mistake. You're an artist and a potter, I'm the canvas and the clay. 'Cause you make all things work together for my future and for my good. You make all things work together for your glory and for your name. You make all things work together for my future and for my good. Yeah, you make all things work together for your glory and for your name. Oh, it's the kind of God you are. You're good. Ooh. And when I doubt it, Lord, remind me I'm wonderfully made. Well, you're an artist and a potter, I'm the canvas and the clay. And I know nothing has been wasted, no failure or mistake. You're an artist and a potter, I'm the canvas and the clay. 'Cause you make all things work together for my future and for my good. You make all things work together for your glory and for your name. When I doubt it, Lord, remind me I'm wonderfully made. You're an artist and a potter, I'm the canvas and the clay. And I know nothing has been wasted, no failure or mistake. 'Cause you're an artist and a potter, I'm the canvas and the clay. That's who you are, that's who you are. It's who I am, it's whose I am, and that. Oh, 'cause you're not finished with me. You're not finished with me yet. You're not finished with me. No, 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 you're not finished with me yet. Come on, you're not finished with me. Oh, you're not finished with me yet. Oh, you're not finished. No, you're not finished. You're not finished. Oh, you're not finished. You're not finished with me. No, no, you're not finished. No, you're not finished. No, you're not finished with me. And when I doubt it, Lord, remind me I'm wonderfully made. You're an artist and a potter, I'm the canvas and the clay. And when I doubt it,
we've got a brand new series, and which is What Are You Expecting? And we will be given this message by Mark Pomari.
Well, hey there to our Elevate Online family. Great to have you with us again. We've been seeing a bit of a spike in FIFOs joining us for our online experience. Now, for those of you who don't live in Western Australia, FIFO is a little acronym for Fly In, Fly Out. And West Australia has a lot of people working in the mining and resources industry right throughout our vast state. And so those workers are often away for a week or 2 weeks at a time. And they've been able to connect with our online experience, which is fantastic. And then we've got people joining us from Illinois in the US. So big shout out to you, and people from many other countries around the world. Now, backing up or following on from Easter, which was obviously last weekend, we're launching a brand new series, which we've called What Are You Expecting? Now, quick question. Any of you have any experience with flat pack furniture from IKEA? Me too. A number of years ago, probably about 10 years ago, our last house, when we moved in there, I wanted to, in my office, my study, put some bookshelves in and create that kind of space. And I thought one of the most straightforward ways to do that was to head into IKEA and buy some Billy bookcases. Now, these are Billy bookcases. Billy bookcases launched in 1979 from IKEA, and they've sold to date over 60 million bookcase units around the world. So very, very popular. Anything that's kind of kept in the IKEA range over a period of time, is popular. And so I'm thinking, well, this is a no-brainer. I'm going to get the Billy bookcases and then, of course, do the assembly, and then voila. So I brought home the flat-packed Billy bookcases and moved into the assembly stage. Now, I think I'm getting better at handyman tasks, but I'm still not very good. And 10 years ago, I was terrible. And from my point of view, even though my wife Louisa disagrees, from my point of view, IKEA instructions, assembly instructions, essentially they might as well be written in Mandarin. They make no sense to me. They're not helpful at all. And so here I am with the flat-packed furniture that required assembly. I put them together, these Billy bookcases, and it was a disaster, absolute train wreck. There was shelves that were upside down. There was where there's meant to be concealed screws, you could see them. The things were actually, I thought I'd have them nicely aligned, the units next to each other. Nope. Anyway, it was. My experience was dramatically below my expectation. And this gap between our expectation and our experience, if our experience falls below our expectation, we call that space disappointment. Disappointment is the gap between your expectation and your experience. Now, the temptation, if we are consistently experiencing things below our expectations, the temptation is to dial down our expectations. Here's an example. Someone tweeted this out in January. My New Year's resolution is to be more efficient. So I'm giving up on it right now instead of wasting all January acting like I can achieve it. And yeah, it's actually the safe play to ratchet down your expectations when your experience isn't living up to your expectations. And it can play out in all areas of life. If your experience in the workplace isn't living up to your expectations, then the temptation is to lower that. If your pursuit of becoming debt-free is taking longer than you expected, then you might ratchet down your expectations, and on it goes. Your experience in your marriage, your experiencing as parents, your experience with your health. All of these things, if they're falling below our expectation, the temptation is to lower our expectation. Well, my pro tip, and I want to suggest to us as we launch this brand new series, my pro tip is that there is a better benchmark that we can use to set our expectations, a better benchmark than people, a better benchmark than circumstances. So I want us to look at that today and over the next 5 weeks of this What Are You Expecting series. So if you've got a second device, how about you pop open your Bible app and join me in Exodus chapter 34. So this is like way back in the beginning of the early part of the Bible, in chapter 34. And the slice I'm going to drop us into, and which in fact is actually the slice that we're going to stay in for the entire 5 weeks of this series, is actually the most, now listen to this or else you might miss it. This slice of Exodus chapter 34 that I'm going to drop us into and that we're going to drill into for 5 weeks is actually the most quoted part of the Old Testament, the old part of the Bible, in other parts of the Old Testament. In other words, more writers, as history went on, as time went on, referenced back to the slice I'm going to drop us into more than any other reference point throughout the entire Old Testament, old part of the Bible. This is huge, and it's huge because in this slice, God outlines 5 fundamental truths, 5 crucial truths that you and I need to know, that the people then needed to know, that generations to follow, which is why many more authors kept referencing that and quoting that they needed to know, and that you and I today and the generations to come need to know these 5 crucial truths. Now, before I drop us into the slice from Exodus chapter 34, let me just give you the backstory. The backstory is the nation of Israel. They had been held in captivity as slaves by the Egyptians for centuries. And eventually God made a way for them to be released from Egypt and move towards the promised land. And they were being led by Moses. And so they'd been freed from Egypt. They were heading towards the promised land. Moses was leading them. But here's the problem. They started to whinge. That's an Aussie expression. They started to complain. You know, familiar things like this. It's taking too long. Oh, I just don't understand. Oh, this isn't how I would have done it. You know, their experience wasn't living up to their expectation, and they started to grow impatient and frustrated and started to actually lose a bit of faith and a bit of hope in God and who He is. In fact, get this, at one point they created for themselves a golden calf, like a golden calf, a statue, and they started worshiping that golden calf, and you can read this for yourself. This is going to sound like, what? Yeah, you can read this for yourself. At one point, after they created this golden calf, they actually worshipped this golden calf and actually said to the golden calf, "Behold the God who brought us out of Egypt." Now, when you get to this part of the story, you know things are about to come off the hinges. And God knew they were about to come off the hinges. And so He staged an intervention. And He spoke these words. The Lord passed in front of Moses, calling out, "Yahweh, the Lord, the God of compassion and mercy. I am slow to anger and filled with unfailing love and faithfulness." You know, God understood that their experience wasn't matching their expectation, and that they were losing hope, and they were starting to ratchet down their expectation that they'd one day arrive at the promised land, that they would get through, in their own time before they died, that And God declared these things, these 5 things. I am the God of compassion. I haven't changed how I feel about you. I'm the God of mercy. I'm going to act based on how I feel about you, not necessarily based on your actions. I'm slow to anger. I have a long fuse. You'll be happy to know that. I am the God of unfailing love. I can do what I promised, and I'm faithful. I will do what I promised. And a quick spoiler, thankfully, they reset their expectations. Thankfully, based on God declaring, reminding them who He is, caused them to ratchet back up their expectations. See, expectations are ultimately an exercise in hope. And I say this regularly, hope is not a strategy. You know, you can hope in certain things, but often it requires us to also put things into action. But there's one exception to this idea that hope is not a strategy, and that is that hope in God is a strategy. Hope that He is who He says He is. Hope that He will do what He says He will do. If we put our hope in God, we can be sure, because of the 5 truths of who He is, that our hopes are safe in His hands. One of Louisa's and my best friends, or our best friends, the wife, her name is Louise, not Louisa, Louise. She has 4 kids. 3 of them are adults. One of them's just finishing high school. And a terrific family, terrific kids. And I call her Mama Bear. And she likes that. She thinks it's sweet. But it's very intentional, because we've been able to be friends with them for 15 plus years now. And we've seen Louise, the way she interacts with her kids. She interacts with her kids with incredible affection and tenderness and devotion, and in a way that is like excels in seeing her in action. And she can and will get ferocious protecting her kids if anybody is saying or doing something that's going to hit them and do some damage. Mama Bear. And I tell you this story of Louise and why I call her Mama Bear, because the word compassion, and this is the first of the 5 truths that God revealed about Himself, says, I'm a God of compassion. This word compassion is the same root word that means from the womb. In other words, God's feeling towards us comes from the same sort of place, the same sort of understanding, the same sort of devotion, the same sort of motivation that a incredibly loving mother has for her children. Because, you know, there's certain things only a mother knows, and there's certain things only a mother will do. And the unique characteristics and the unique qualities of a great mother, you know, God, He feels them towards us. He demonstrates them towards us. Things that only mums know and things that only mums will do. There was a event in history which demonstrates a few things, actually. And what had happened is these 2 women who happen to have been prostitutes, both of them fell pregnant. They actually lived in the same house. Both of them had fallen pregnant, and both of them had given birth to their babies just a few days apart from one another. And in those days, the baby would sleep with the mother in the bed. And what had happened early in the life of both of these babies is on one particular night, one of the babies actually died, actually was kind of suffocated accidentally by the mother. And the mother, of the baby that had died, when she found out her baby was dead, she was obviously somewhat distraught. But then she hatched a sneaky plan that while the other mother and her baby was asleep, that she'd actually switch the babies. And so then the other mother would wake up thinking it was her baby that had died, and then, okay. So when the second mother, the mother of the baby who hadn't died but now was lying next to a dead baby, she suspected that the babies had been switched because, even mums can tell the difference between two babies at a very young age. So she insisted that the two of them, these two mothers, take the one living baby and plead their case before the king, King Solomon. And so King Solomon, having heard their case of which one is the real mother of this particular baby, told his servants, go and get me a sword. And, when you're the king, you can order a sword. And the sword came, and he said, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the baby in half, and I want to give half of the baby to one of the mothers and the other half to the other mother. Well, then the woman who was the real mother of the living child and who loved him very much cried out, "Oh no, my lord, give her the child. Please do not kill him." But the other woman said, "Oh, all right, he'll neither be yours nor mine. Divide him between us." And, spoiler, Solomon was wise enough to know that the mother who'd cried out, who loved him very much and cried out, "No, give the baby to the other mother," he knew immediately that was the real mother and decided to give the baby back to its real mother. And this phrase, the woman who loved him very much, is the same word or can be interspersed or interchanged with the word compassion. This mother felt compassion towards her child when its life was threatened, so much so that she was willing to act, so much so that she was willing to sacrifice, so much so that she was willing to suffer so that her child wouldn't. See, compassion is not a soft word. Compassion is a brave word. Compassion is a courageous word. Compassion is an activistic word. Compassion means that something's going to happen. Something's going to shift. Something's going to change. God feels compassion. God is compassion. God acts as a result of his compassion. And this declaration that God made is, "I'm a God of compassion," that would have literally set him apart from every other god that the people were worshiping at the time. Because back in that time in history, gods were known for being distant. Gods were known for setting themselves up on mountains and on thrones and in celestial places, that they weren't going to come looking for you. You had to go looking for them, but probably you wouldn't ever find them. They were distant, disconnected, disinterested. And here God declares to his people, "No, I'm a God of compassion." And by the way, you and I, or the people we know, might not worship golden calves and gods that live on mountains today, gods of other religions. But we can still worship other gods. Money, stuff, career. And here's a spoiler. While those things aren't bad and we're often blessed with those sorts of things, worshipping them is a bad idea because they don't feel anything towards you. They are completely agnostic towards you. They don't feel compassion towards you. And you say, "Well, I love them." Yeah, but they don't love you back. They don't demonstrate the sort of compassion that God declares. Compassion. I wonder if we went out in our city, or you went out in your city this afternoon and took a survey and asked people, and I mean just anybody, atheists, agnostics, Satanists, even some Jesus followers, ask them this question: what's one emotion that you would associate, like assuming God's real, whether you believe it or not, but let's just play a game, assuming he's real for a moment, what's one emotion you would associate with him? What's one emotion you think he would feel consistently? I wonder if some of the answers that we would get back might be things like disappointed, angry, aloof and disinterested. However, Jesus, when he was here on earth, the same Jesus that said, "Whoever has seen me has seen the Father," the number one emotion, the number one response that we see coming from Jesus, time after time after time, in person after person after person, circumstance after circumstance after circumstance, is compassion. Jesus felt compassion. Jesus was moved with compassion. We see again and again and again Jesus inserting himself into situations, into circumstances, into the lives and the story of people. And when he heard that their hope was ratcheting down, when he heard that they weren't experiencing God's best, he was moved with compassion. And you will almost always see the next thing being an action, being something that Jesus did to change the circumstances. Don't lower your expectations, Jesus would imply. Keep your hope up. Raise your hope in some cases. And let your experience actually match your expectation. You know, we just celebrated the week leading up to Easter, which is often called Passion Week. And in this context, the word passion means to suffer. The word compassion means a desire to set others free from their suffering. And so Jesus demonstrated a willingness to suffer, passion, stemming from his compassion, a willingness to suffer, to alleviate and remove others from their suffering. And if you're a Jesus follower, you have experienced his compassion already. I want to remind you that you can experience his compassion today and that you can expect to experience his compassion in the future. What are you expecting? Expect God's compassion. Friends, love to see you. Join us for our online experience next week, week 2 of our series, What Are You Expecting? And be sure to have someone join you on the couch as we journey through this series and ratchet up our expectations.
We love giving at Elevate Church, and our giving ways are down here below. It's very great to have you with us today. Go out there, pray, preach the word of God, and we will see you next week again as we continue with What Are You Expecting? See you then.